on the podcast and on video, it's Vadim Alexandre, Head of Healthcare, SP Angel. You're right, Vadim.
How are you doing, Justin?
I'm cold. In fact, do
Yeah.
you know what we've had? I say our heating bill's gone through the roof because we had lots of building work done,
Okay.
and I think it was in November. It was like 450 quid for the month, and then December came in at 550 quid for the month. I thought, it's like £6,000 a year we're going to be spending on heating. So I think part of it was because I was living in my office and I've got a sort of 3 kilowatt heater. I mean, keeping me warm. But so that's why I've got a top on today. I'm trying to keep the electricity bills
Well,
down.
I am cold too, exactly.
I know.
Same for me. It's just it's proper winter now out there.
Yeah, well, I tell you who's feeling the cold is Rachel Reeves at the moment. Do you know, I said I think this pressure that they are under a lot of pressure. Every paper, every headline, pretty much is talking
Yeah,
about bond yields and the
yeah,
cost of government debt. And I think if anything, the budget was a disaster. They're never going to admit the budget was a disaster. They're never going to come out and
yeah,
say, "Oh, we did it wrong there. We shouldn't have punished business, which are the growth engine of the UK. We
yeah,
should do it some other way
yeah.
to raise money." So they're never going to say that. But I think now the pressure on them to do something, and in fact, there's bits in papers today in City AM, in Telegraph Times, saying she's now asking cabinet ministers and Keir Starmer for ideas on growth. And now it seems like it's a bit late for that, isn't it? You've been in the job since July, but I think now going forward they realise the budget, punishing business is a mistake, and I think going forward they'll probably look for other ways to raise money because they'll have to raise money or they'll have to cut spending in other areas. But
I
they are
think
looking for growth.
unfortunately what financial markets are telling them right now is that it's whether we like it or not. I think the only outcome to something like a bond scare is cutting spending. And I think there's talk of a
Yeah.
March not emergency budget, but in the budget update that
Yeah.
that she might be
The
forcing.
OBR, yeah, OBR will come out 26th of March. The OBR, Office of Budget Responsibility,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
they're coming out with an update on
Correct.
finances, and of course, the cost of debt has gone up so much. I think she had like 10 billion headroom for day-to-day spending. That's
Yeah.
been reduced to nothing, pretty much, because
Yeah.
of the cost of servicing debt. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, do you know what I like about this? You can't BS the markets. You can put as positive spin in as you want. You can have your,
Yeah.
spin doctors out there, and this is in the UK and America.
Mhm.
When it comes down to it, your ultimate judge is the bond markets, and there's a lot of money there. You can't sway that, trillions and trillions of dollars,
Mhm.
and they are your ultimate judge at the end of the day, aren't they?
Yes, and I guess in democracies people might not like that, and don't get me wrong, I mean
Yeah,
I believe in democracy. It's just
yeah,
that the fact of the matter is if you're borrowing from third parties, then you answer to them, and
yeah,
that's the fundamental problem of debt. Never
yeah.
lender or borrower be.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said,
Sorry.
when you have to raise money, when you've increased borrowing to
Yeah.
get some growth going, and it's not like turning out as you thought, and because you've cut on the short term, you've cut the legs off business. They think, hang on, they're not going to achieve growth. There's a big seller in the market, in the bond market. There's the UK government, and in fact, America. The levels are huge in both
Well, no, the
companies.
US, you're right that the US in some ways has the same problem. I mean, I
Yeah,
do think markets are betting on Trump for growth and all that. That's fine. So he
yeah,
probably has a bit more wiggle room because he's overseen a huge stock rally on his first term, right?
yeah,
Before COVID. But I think the issue fundamentally here is that once you get cornered by the market as a government, the only way out is to cut spending.
yeah,
Whether we like that or not, it's not a political issue anymore. It's just the market will only forgive you in that way. So if you think about it right now, uh, or put it this way, do you think the alternative strategy is to raise taxes more? No, that's what got the government
no,
in this position, right?
exactly,
So the only
exactly, yeah.
alternative is to cut spending, which unfortunately, it doesn't sit well with their platform. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
or they literally. I mean, in America, they are trying to do this with Elon Musk and Doge. Department of what is it
Yeah,
called? Government
government
efficiency.
efficiency, government
Yeah,
efficiency. Yeah,
they're going to have to get more efficient. They're going to
yeah,
the people in the government have cut the government size in some way and just become more efficient. Maybe that's good
yeah.
for AI, but I mean, there's no two ways about it. And they don't want to cut investment now. So yeah, so it's amazing how it's going. It's spanning up. But it's not good for like I said, equities, because essentially, when you get bond yields going up, like the big sellers in the market, like the U.S. government is selling bonds, continually
Yeah,
selling bonds, you know, that pushes the price down of bonds, of course, pushes the yield up. So,
yeah,
and the thing is, the issue is why this is not good for equities is that why would you, if markets are rolling over, which they are I think it's the first or second week of losses on the Nasdaq,
yeah,
and when you have risk investments and they're rolling over and going downwards, and you can get a safe 5% in a government bond,
yeah,
you just pull your money out of equities, and that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
worrying thing. So, and I think the only I don't know what's going to happen here is the Bank of England will reduce interest rates, but I think they're going to have to because it's come to the state now where
Exactly.
if they keep interest rates high, it's an extra cost on business, and that's the last thing they want to do, and that will in itself it
But
plays into inflation because they're going to raise their costs, raise prices. So it comes to the
yeah.
stage where you raise interest rates so much, it's almost inflationary.
Well, the problem is that if you have a bit of a run on on sterling, you have
Mm.
no choice but to keep rates up. In fact, you might even
Yeah,
end up raising rates in circumstances. I mean, that's what happens, right? If you have an attack on the current. Right now, sterling's dropping because yields
yeah.
are popping. Okay,
Well, that's
that's
all.
the reason.
That's only that doesn't happen very often. Is it normally the way around because the price of the currency is judged by the interest rate, and yet sterling was falling and interest rates were going up. So it's really odd. This. I mean, what's and apparently this has only happened before. No, the last time it happened was 1976, and it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign.
Well,
Your currency
it's an
weakening.
attack on the currency. So people are
Yeah,
starting to worry about the fiscal responsibility of the government, just like under
yeah,
Liz Truss, right? So that's the same thing happened under Liz Truss. Yields popped, went up, and the currency collapsed. Okay. And then the
yeah,
central bank response, if the currency starts dropping very aggressively, the only response the central bank has, in response, is to raise rates.
yeah,
So that's terrible for financial markets, and that's exactly kind of what we're starting to see. We're not seeing a complete attack on the currency yet, but what we're starting to see is the uncertainty around that is affecting equity markets immediately. And it's
yeah.
unfortunate because I'm telling you from our own experience in small cap healthcare that we were starting to see a recovery in December,
Yes.
January.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? While we're talking, last chart I just showed was a 30-year government yield,
Yeah.
and that is as high now as it was in 1998. I've just had a pop here. I mean, it's sort of completely unrelated to what we generally talk about, but I've had Brent crude just shoot up there. Look at that,
Hmm.
over 3% in one session. I don't know if there's any news around.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I was looking for that actually right before this call because gold, crude, and even Bitcoin have been up pretty aggressively today.
Why is
So,
that? Copper towers, but Brent crude advanced stills. No, I can't see any news there. I'm sure something will come out on that,
yeah,
but that's an
yeah,
unusual pop in one session. Just
yeah.
today, that is. Look at that.
This morning, in the last couple of hours, actually.
Yeah,
So
that's just
something
now.
is
So
going on. I don't know if it's maybe something like war related or whatever. I don't know. Feels
yeah,
like
I hope
something
not.
Middle East
It does
related.
feel like that. Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about some stocks. Vadim, what do you want to start off with?
Yeah, so let's talk. Okay, you're just talking about this recovery.
Yeah.
Again, let's caveat that with, you know, what we can't control, which is the budget and its impact and everything we're hearing about bond yields. That's obviously everything is kind of pausing again all of a sudden, and this is in the last few days. But prior to that, and you can see it with a few small transactions that have taken place, but companies that are that have been hit hard historically over the last 3 years in this biotech downturn are starting to see a bounce. One company
Mm.
we've discussed at length here, it's had all kinds of issues. It's been, through a NASDAQ listing started out on AIM. This is Spectral MD, which is now called Spectral AI. They were initially listed on AIM. They then moved to NASDAQ via SPAC. Stock price got hit. It's had a difficult time, and then on NASDAQ, they were hit by short selling, etc. But then in the last 2 months, there's been a quite significant rally in the stock. I mean, it's hit a high of, as you can see there on your chart, of three
Yeah,
dollars something.
it went from below one pretty much
Yeah.
up to 3.2. I mean, it's come off the last few sessions, but so has the Nasdaq. To be honest, it's
Yeah,
Nasdaq's
exactly.
a bit
But you can
tumbled.
see
Yeah,
the trend reversal there, right?
yeah, yeah.
Finally, it's broken out. It's broken through all its moving averages, and it's definitely moving in the right direction now, this stock,
Yeah.
which is great to see. You know, that's a good example of this recovery I'm talking about. And you know, I think there's a long way to go on this one, just because it's just, you know, this is a company that has $250 million of financing from the US government, an agency called BARDA, and its market cap is what, 50 million? It doesn't make any sense. It's just, it doesn't stack up at all. But it was one of these beaten down stocks. And then once the market starts to recover and catches on to this, you start getting what we're seeing right now. And this is what how I define a recovery. I mean, go back even further, you can see how it's done nothing for 3 years, and things all of a sudden are starting to recover. That was just the SPAC. The collapse at the very beginning is when the SPAC deal gets got closed. So this is a good example. Another stock that we follow is, and one last thing on this one is that there is news flow that is imminent. We're expecting a trial result imminently, and that we hope, you know, you never know with 100% certainty, but this isn't a clinical drug. It's a diagnostic test, if you like. It's an AI powered test that determines whether a burn wound is going to heal or not. Okay, so the risks of a trial failure here are much lower. It's not like when you're testing a drug and you find out that the drug does something that you didn't expect it to do. You know, clinical trials on drugs are far more risky. So here the risks are much lower. The kind of previous results on the accuracy of their AI powered camera is quite high, so there's no real reason to believe that the data will come through any different than it has in the past, and it's very powerful. So ultimately we expect a good trial result, and we're expecting it any day now, because they said they would get it done by the end of 2024, and I imagine that it's slipped a little bit into 2025, so I'm expecting to see that any day. And in the US, usually stocks, you know, aggressively respond to positive trial results. By the way, this is the pivotal trial. This is the result that gets them the data that they need to file with the FDA. And then once they file with the FDA, and they're hoping to file with the FDA in H1 of this year. So, you know, so they'll be commercial hopefully sometime in 2026. I say commercial. Meanwhile, they are getting revenues from this BARDA contract, which is the $250 million that I was telling you about. They make about, I think expectations are for about $28 million in revenues this year. So, you know, again, there's another metric for you, $28 million in revenues from BARDA, and a market cap of, you know, whatever it is, 50, 60, I think right now.
Yeah, well, after yesterday's drop, I think it's down to showing 46 on here.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So again, a dislocation between the valuation. That's why I think people are it's starting to get noticed.
Yeah. Okay. What's next? Anything else?
Yeah, another one is Hemogenyx. That's another company we act for that is also expecting news of the commencement of their trial. And then recently, they did a small placing recently, and they did the thing that was of note is how close they are now to recruiting their first patient. So kind of expecting that any day too. And that is a CAR T therapy. This is now therapeutics. CAR T is all the rage right now. You know, there are pretty significant deals that are being done in this area. I'll just explain what that is. It's in the area of immuno-oncology. You take a cell, an immune cell from the patient who's suffering from cancer, from a form of cancer. You modify it to recognize the cancer. So you take these cells out of the patient, and then you expand the cells that are modified, that you've modified to recognize the cancer, and then you put them back in the patient, and they kill the cancer. And it's had very, very good results. All the other many other CAR T therapies out there. So they're bringing their first CAR T therapy into patients, which is a pretty big milestone for this business and long awaited. And that's imminent. So we hope to see something there in the coming weeks as well. And I think that would be another driver of interest in the stock.
Yeah. Okay. And they consolidated, didn't they? The shares recently.
Yeah, they did a consolidation, so a pretty big one. I think they have £4 roughly is their share. Yeah, there you go, £4 as you have there on your screen. So there was a penny stock, and they I think a 400 to 1 consolidation.
Okay, and there was some news out. We mentioned, I know Cambridge Cognition. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah, I haven't. Let's bring out their latest announcement. I haven't had a
Yeah,
close look at that one. What it was
yeah,
something to do with they're being
uh,
they're part of a larger trial.
yeah.
Yes.
Bristol Myers Squibb, which is obviously a big company in
Yeah.
America,
Yeah.
recent FDA approval, and they used their um, their technology, didn't they?
Yeah.
So there we are. So yes, schizophrenia treatment. So Cantilab digital assessments provide
Yeah.
accurate and objective. So they use that and say, and that's quite validation when you get, say companies like Bristol Myers Squibb, using Cantilab, because
Absolutely. So, again, remembering this company, what they do is they help pharmaceutical companies. So their clients are pharma companies in assessing whether there's changes in cognition in the patient. So here it's, a schizophrenia drug. Their original major indication is Alzheimer's disease, right? So because that's where you have changes in cognition. But they are branching out into many other areas, schizophrenia being one of them, Huntington's disease, other areas where cognition is important. But that is the next big therapeutic area. It's already becoming so because there were two drugs that were approved for Alzheimer's disease, and there's more to come. It's such a large indication, Alzheimer's disease, just that indication, right? Obviously,
yeah,
schizophrenia.
yeah, well, it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah,
I've noticed it getting more attention here, and you realize that we have generally most of the Western world have got aging populations, and
yeah,
so it's going to get bigger.
exactly. I mean, just to give a bit of history, cardiac, conditions were the number one killer. So, as in cardiovascular disease. So,
Mm.
heart attacks, strokes. We kind of took a big that indicate those indications took a big hit with the invention of statins in the 1990s. So,
Yeah,
I think everybody knows about statins. Most middle-aged men take statins onwards, right? These are drugs that will lower cholesterol. That significantly reduced, and obviously lifestyle changes and knowledge about it, improvements. But that was a big pharmaceutical win in the 1990s. And as a result, the next big therapeutic area was oncology. And now with immuno-oncology, again, cancer is taken. It's not to say these diseases and problems have been resolved, but medicine has advanced and they've taken a little bit of the sting out of the death rates, if you like. The
look at
next
that.
big, the next big
Mm.
therapeutic area now, because as a result of all these, solutions, people are going to be living longer. But
Mm.
the next one is going to be CNS disorders, so central nervous system disorders, namely Alzheimer's disease, but
Mm.
other ones included in that category. So that's already starting to have an impact on in drug development. It's the next big area, if you like.
Mm.
And this is where Cambridge Cognition sits. They sit as a supplier to pharma companies in this area, and there's a lot of pharmaceutical drugs in the pipeline in this space. So that no, it's
Yeah,
there's people are starting to clue into the fact that Cambridge is undervalued. Their stock has rallied actually since the last time we spoke.
yeah. Look
But
at the stats. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew amongst older people, and we are understanding. We are aging populations in the Western world.
yeah,
It was always like cancer, heart,
yeah,
and dementia. And
yeah.
now this is Alzheimer's Research UK. They're saying that leading cause of death in 2023. So it's gone up the chart there. It's not a happy number one. My mother had dementia, and parents had dementia. It's
Mhm.
still not good for me. But like I said, it is, it's a good thing. But when you have these numbers, then it becomes increasingly, like you say, commercial
Yeah.
for companies to head for this. Which I mean, it may sound a bit sort of brazen and out there and sort of a bit crass, but essentially it'll end up helping people with dementia. So it's a good thing at the end of the day. So if you're I know talking about investing, it's a
And
good
and
area
and
to
it's
look at.
been, it's been the holy grail in many ways to have any kind of effect on Alzheimer's disease. And only this past 2 years have the first two drugs ever been approved in Alzheimer's disease. So
Yeah.
there is a real change and there's real momentum in the sector, if you like, because these drugs have an impact. You know what I
Look
mean?
at
They
this.
actually do
Yeah,
something.
yeah. September the 12th, September the 12th, 2022, right, was the last time the share price of Cambridge Connection finished above the 200-day moving average. Look at this today. Today, it's just above the 200-day moving average. It hasn't done that since September 2022. So that's a very good sign. We're seeing, a rise here. Maybe the end of the downtrend is end of the downtrend is finished there.
Yeah,
Maybe we're starting an uptrend. It's normally when you get a significant rise like that, you may have to go sideways for a while, but
yeah,
it's looking positive considering just it hasn't closed above the 200-day moving average. Over
for so long. Yeah,
where
yeah,
are we now?
absolutely.
2.5 years, two and a few
Yeah,
years. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, maybe the bottom is in. Maybe who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, if the market starts to turn and biotech, drug developers start to be able to refinance, then they'll get more and more business. And that's been the story of so many stocks over the last 2, 3 years. But if you're in the right sector, and they are, and we've always liked this stock for that reason, I'm a holder of the stock. I've sold a little bit over the last 3 years, but I'm still a holder. And I'm glad to see that it's starting to break out again, and go.
Yeah,
I genuinely feel that they're in the right place. They're
yeah,
in the
yeah,
right
totally.
sector. Now, let's not look, we can't sugarcoat the fact that revenues have flatlined and contracted and they've had problems and they're still searching for a new CEO. All these are issues, but they are definitely in the right space.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Marvelous stuff. We'll keep an eye on that. COG is a ticker, and like I said, beforehand, I mean, look at the rally it had back in 2020. I mean, that was the bull market and the
Yeah,
frothy top. But I mean,
yeah,
it did go from like below where we are right now, 19 pence, up to 190. That was a 10 bagger.
yeah,
And sometimes, companies like that, when they get the momentum, they can really motor, as long as they haven't,
absolutely.
as
This
they
is
haven't
what I love
issued
about
loads
small
more.
caps.
Yeah, as long as they haven't issued loads more shares since that happened. And I don't think they have. They haven't
No,
released more.
because they were
Yeah,
profitable or
yeah,
break
yeah,
even. You know what I mean? They
yeah,
weren't really hemorrhaging, and their revenues were going up quite aggressively
yeah,
during COVID. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Cool. Thanks for that, Vadim. And speak to you next month.
excellent. Thanks, Justin.